Soldier, rebel, president, and for a lot of people, the very embodiment of France itself. Today, we're diving into the life of Charles de Gaulle, who was, without a doubt, one of the most consequential and, yeah, controversial figures of the 20th century. Right from the very first line of his war memoirs, de Gaulle gives us the key to understanding his entire life. This certain idea of his. It wasn't just some vague patriotism. No, it was this deep-seated conviction that France, to be truly France, had to be great. And honestly, that one idea, it fueled pretty much everything he ever did. And that's really the heart of our question today. I mean, think about it. Twice in his life, when France was staring at absolute ruin, this is the guy who steps in from the political wilderness to completely reshape its destiny. So how on earth did he pull that off? Okay, so our story kicks off with the first massive crisis, the darkest days of World War II, a time when the French Republic literally just stopped existing. You know, the crazy thing is, de Gaulle actually saw this disaster coming. All through the 1930s, he was this lone voice, just a colonel, arguing for a modern, professional army built around tanks and fast attacks. But the French High Command? They were completely stuck in the past, still thinking about the trench warfare of World War I. They just weren't listening. And the price for ignoring him was, well, it was catastrophic. When Germany invaded in May 1940, all those theories de Gaulle had been pushing became France's terrifying new reality. The German blitzkrieg just sliced through their defenses. I mean, within 6 weeks, the whole government had collapsed, and Marshal Pétain, a hero from the First War, was seeking an armistice with Hitler.
But de Gaulle, he just refused to accept defeat. He was a brand new general that almost nobody had heard of, and he escaped to London. Then, on June 18th, he got on the BBC and made this historic broadcast. To the new government in France, this was treason, plain and simple. But to the few people who heard it, it was the first tiny spark of hope. He just declared himself the leader of Free France.
So you've basically got these two versions of France now. There was Vichy France, the official government, led by de Gaulle's old mentor, Marshal Pétain, which was actively collaborating with Nazi Germany. And then you had this tiny, fledgling movement, Free France, being run out of a small office in London by this defiant general who'd been condemned to death back in his own country.
All right, let's jump ahead to after the war. De Gaulle leads the provisional government for a bit, but he resigns in 1946, totally fed up with the return of all the petty party politics. He goes into retirement for 12 long years. But you guessed it, another crisis was brewing that would call him back to save the Republic again.
24. Just let that number sink in. That's how many different governments the Fourth Republic burned through in just 12 years. It wasn't a functioning democracy, it was a revolving door of political chaos, totally unable to deal with the huge challenges France was facing. And this famous quote of his? It just sums up his frustration perfectly. He saw this country that was so culturally rich, but was just hopelessly broken and ungovernable when it came to its politics. For him, the system itself was the problem. And the thing that finally broke the camel's back was the war in Algeria. The political chaos back in Paris meant there was no clear strategy, and the French army over in Algeria felt completely betrayed. So much so, they threatened a coup. The Fourth Republic was about to implode, and France was staring right into the abyss of a civil war. So in this moment of total desperation, who do the politicians call? The one guy they think can control the army and hold the country together, de Gaulle. And here's what's so important to understand about his return. He didn't seize power, he was invited back, given emergency authority by the National Assembly, and his job was to write a new constitution for a new republic, the Fifth Republic, which was then overwhelmingly approved by the French people in a vote. So now, with the brand new, powerful presidency of the Fifth Republic, de Gaulle finally had the tools to put his certain idea of France into practice. This was what people called his politics of grandeur, a fierce and, often confrontational push to restore France's independence and its status on the world stage. And man, he did not waste any time. He launched France's own independent nuclear program, making it the fourth nuclear power on Earth. Then, he pulls France out of NATO's integrated military command, basically kicking American bases off French soil. He vetoed Britain's entry into the European community, not once but twice, because he was worried it was just a Trojan horse for American influence. He was trying to carve out a third way, totally independent of Washington and Moscow. And this just puts some numbers to that huge ambition. Becoming the fourth nuclear power wasn't just about defense. It was a massive statement that France was a major player you couldn't just ignore. And those 2 vetoes? They showed he was more than willing to stand completely alone to protect his vision of Europe.
But that strongman, authoritarian style, well, it eventually caught up with him. The huge student and worker protests of May 1968 shook his authority to its very core. A year later, he lost a referendum on some government reforms, and he did what he always did when he lost the people's support. He resigned. Immediately. And he walked away from power for good.
So how do we remember a guy like that? His legacy's just so divided. Was he the savior who brought back national pride, ended a horrible war, and built a stable republic? Or was he an autocrat, a kind of Republican monarch who used the state TV for propaganda and picked fights with everyone? The truth is, he was both. But here's the bottom line. You just can't deny his impact. The strong presidential system that he designed is still the foundation of French government today. And that core Gaullist idea, this vision of a strong, sovereign France that jealously protects its independence, that is still a hugely powerful force in French politics, from the far left all the way to the far right. And that brings us to the big question his legacy really leaves for us. In a 21st century that's all about globalization and interconnected challenges, is there still a place for de Gaulle's fierce, unyielding politics of grandeur? What does national greatness even mean today?